This is the PressBox High School Football Show with Booker Corrigan and legendary former McDonough coach Dom Damico. The guys look over everything going on in the world of high school football, both at the private school and public school level. Now, here's Booker Corrigan.
Glad to be here in the Live Casino Hotel studio alongside my longtime friend, a guy I taught with and coached with a little bit. I use the term coach with loosely, Coach Dom Damico. Dom, thanks for joining us.
A confounded Corrigan. That was one of Scott's biggest lines as a coach, as a middle school coach, and I love Booker, and this is going to be a fun show.
Yes, it is. Now, one of the things that we want to start with, because this is week one, is Maryland high school football has now become really relevant nationally. They're producing players. They got obviously fantastic coaches. When did you see that relevance happen? And what is the state of Maryland high school football right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I came from Philadelphia, being a high school coach in Philadelphia. I came here in 1994. There was no professional football team.
No Ravens.
No Ravens. Colts already left. And then the Ravens came in 96. And right after that, you started to see a spark in rec ball football, more interest in little league football, high school football. More kids started playing. And I think the Ravens coming to town really sparked that interest.
And it's not the little Ravens, just that isolated program. It was the entire, lightning bolt of, we have an NFL team. Let's play rec football.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a big interest statewide. It wasn't just in Baltimore. All the counties, all the districts, all the areas started playing. There was a big renewed interest in high school football, in rec football, and coaches in high school started to watch 8th grade, 7th grade football to actually really start recruiting those kids that are playing at that level to try to get them to come to their high school. So yeah, the Ravens really did help that.
And relevance. We talk about nationally recognized teams and programs. Obviously, St. Francis is the hot button because they are perhaps the best team in the country.
Well, yeah, not only that, I don't think they may be the best team in the country, but maybe the best high school team ever. I don't really believe there has ever been a high school football team that had 20 Power 5 full scholarships. That's just crazy. I'm just glad that we're not playing them at Franklin this year or have to play them at McDonough anymore.
And one of the things that you and I talked about extensively in our preparations was, how do you create a schedule if you're St. Francis, because you want to challenge your kids?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you really don't want to. They're already playing national level teams and steamrolling them. So I think they'll obviously finish their schedule next year, and those national level teams are about the only competition you're going to get. Biff and Henry Russell are going to really have to schedule the top 20 teams in the country to have a competitive, even remotely competitive game.
And they have a huge game this weekend. They're traveling. They're flying across the country to play a top team. I mean, how do you manage that? Do they have a director of football operations, and have you applied for the job yet?
I have not, but I know they do. If it's needed to win, Biff will make sure it's there.
Yeah.
I mean, he loves football. He loves kids. He's going to make it right for those kids at St. Francis. He envisioned this years ago to have a national level football team, and and it's happening right now.
And people sometimes will say, the MIA teams wouldn't play them. Why would they? I mean, what are they? Their kids aren't going to get anything out of losing 45-3, maybe 45-0.
Yeah, well, I think that's an interesting question. I think it really depends on your connection to a league or not. And at the time, St. Francis was in the MIAA, and there was rules that that guided the MIAA, and they weren't allowed to play independent unless you asked the league and all those things. So, I think Biff ultimately, when he got everything in place, really wanted to go to a national schedule and kind of just play the MIAA schedule until he can build it up to where he can play at a national level. But it doesn't make sense for the league to play them, and it doesn't make sense for St. Francis to be beating teams 50-0 at halftime.
And it's also, this is not the St. Francis football show. We will get to that, and we will cover St. Francis because they deserve it. But some other programs that really stand out to you.
Well, again, I think Maryland, the state of Maryland football, period. You watch the Ravens play on Sunday. Their offense looks exciting. Their defense looks exciting. And I think it all happens from there. Everybody wants to watch high school pro football on Sundays. And when they put a great product on there, it kind of trickles down. Maryland, what Loxley's doing, throwing 60 points up on Syracuse is really impressive. Syracuse was a top 20 team. and what Loxley's doing there is important because he's ultimately going to try to keep these in-state high school players to go and try to get them to come to Maryland. So I think that's relevant as well. And then you have St. Francis, DeMatha, and St. John's at a local level playing at a national level, which is incredible.
Local teams who have done so much with their program that they're able to be a nationally recognized program. When you first got to Baltimore football in 1994, it was players. There were some really, really good players who could go to national things, but I don't know that the teams were at that level. How do you get there?
Definitely not at that level. There was definitely, the major colleges always recruited this area. It's a hotbed for recruiting. Now it's even higher than it's hotter than it was back then. I think, again, it links back to getting the Ravens here, and then once you get that interest, it kind of just builds upon itself. You got St. John's and you got DeMatha. I think DeMatha, 20 years ago was still the national powerhouse team. Even though they're kind of a DC team, but they were a national level team. Bill McGregor is a coach down there. He's actually back there. He left Biff's staff, and he's now at DeMatha again, retired from DeMatha and came back. I think he has more NFL players that played for him as a high school coach than anybody in the country.
Wow. That's a statement. It's Dom Damico, Booker Corrigan. This is the PressBox High School Football Show, brought to you from the Live Casino Hotel Studio, talking a lot about programs. The other thing I have to let our listeners know is, who are the coaches that, obviously you just dropped one. There's some great coaches now, and some of that parallels the success of the Ravens and then just the overall interest in NFL, high school, and college football.
There is. I think the next level, once you go for that national level teams, you really have the MIAA. The MIAA has been historically 4 or 5 of those teams are always in the top 10 in the state. So there's not only really good players coming out of the MIAA, there's really good coaching in the MIAA. Calvert Hall has Donald Davis, who's been there for a long time and puts a great product on the field year in and year out. Rich Holzer down at Mount St. Joe, great coach, spreads it out, throws the ball all over the field and has fun with those kids. And then Kyle Schmidt at Spalding is really an interesting football coach, a great offensive mind, really tough to prepare for. Takes you a few days just to prepare for his kind of offense.
And you say that, and I could tell the people listening, Coach D'Amico was a bit of an innovator offensively. I remember watching Matt Prim as your quarterback, and you had the whole lacrosse team where you starting player Brian McGregor at center, right? And Honda False Friday.
Yeah,
I mean, I had no idea what it meant, and I was coaching the program, but you had no huddles. You had a high school team, and you went no huddle.
We did. I was one of the first high school coaches in Philly in 1989 to run the run and shoot and use Mouse Davis and the original 4-wide spread no huddle offense. So that was fun, but nobody's running that anymore. It's evolved to a different style of game. High school, it's evolved really to spread football with a triple option throwing the football. And basically a lot of what the Ravens did on Sunday. And the high school, the college teams and the high school teams are all mimicking that. Everyone is looking for a quarterback that's dual threat that can throw and run, and that's kind of where the running shoot evolved to.
It's funny because Bobby Sablehouse is a name that, I mean, the guy had an arm. I watched him play high school football. He was also throwing the ball to 4 Division I athletes who were unbelievably talented. How do you get a player to understand the intricacies of the offense you're trying to run?
Yeah, well, back then, it was definitely a different offense. It was more throwing the football and reading progressions of coverages. And Bobby was a traditional pro-style back then quarterback where you're 6'5", you're staying in the pocket, more kind of like what Tom Brady does. And there's not a whole lot of high school quarterbacks that do that. The NFL actually has a problem right now with the lack of those guys. So the league is evolving more to the Russell Wilsons, Lamars, and the guys that can both throw and run.
Funny you should mention my man Russ.
I know that. Good friends of
give
Booker
Russ,
Corrigan.
Yeah, give Russ a little shout out since he gave me one on his podcast last week. So love you, buddy. LABD. I got your back. Let's talk about how a recruiter gets in touch with one of your players, like Eric King, who a great basketball player, parlayed his amazing basketball skills into being a tremendous defensive back on the Wake Forest team, and then played for the Buffalo Bills.
True, yeah. This area is a hotbed, so every Division I and 1AA school is recruiting this area. So when I was at McDonough and now I'm at Franklin, they are allowed to come to your campus and talk to your kids. And there'd be lines outside of my office when I was at McDonough with 10 or 15 coaches waiting for me just to talk to these kids. The 8th grade kids that are coming up to high schools, they know which schools are getting heavily recruited, and they want to go to McDonough, Gilman, St. Francis, Mount St. Joe, Spalding. They know that there's heavy traffic from college coaches. They see the tape, they get on list, and they show up at my office. Some of these recruiting budgets for some of the top 50 or 60 programs is in the millions of dollars. Their coaches are all over the country flying around, and they go to these programs that produce players in the future. So at McDonough and at Franklin, we see tons of traffic for college coaches swinging by trying to recruit their players.
And I owe you a thank you on that because I shook Urban Meyer's hand.
You did.
One time he came to campus to recruit. I think it was a Cleland.
He did. He recruited Lane Cleland, who played at Notre Dame.
Did some work at Notre Dame. We got to take a quick break. The PressBox High School Football Show is brought to you by Glen Burnie Transmissions. We will be back right after this to talk more high school football with Dom Damico. I'm Booker Corrigan. We'll be right back.
Need groceries today but don't have time to shop? Order online with same-day pickup or delivery at Wise Markets. Wise to go online. Now that's convenient.
This is Stan the Fan for Glen Burnie Transmissions, located right in the heart of Glen Burnie for almost 60 years. If you suspect you're having a transmission problem, GBT can save you hundreds of dollars over taking it to the dealers for a repair. Make an appointment for a free diagnostic and estimate. Call GBT at 855-728-1841. Their mission is simple: to provide excellent service at a reasonable price. Go to their website at gbt-online.com to check out all of the 5-star reviews. Let my friend Mark Schwartzman and his GBT team take the troubles out of transmission troubles. Call them today at 855-728-1841.
Respect. It's more than a word. In the U.S. Army, it is one of our core values, earned through selfless service to our nation and making a difference both at home and abroad. On the Army team, respect is earned daily. And now, in addition to earning respect, you may earn up to $40,000 in bonuses if you qualify. To learn more, visit goarmy.com/bonus or call 1-800-USA-ARMY. Paid for by the U.S. Army.
And we are back from the live Casino Hotel studio. I want to remind you the PressBox High School Football Show brought to you by Wise Markets. Thrilled to have Coach Dom Damico joining me this fall here to talk Baltimore, Maryland, state of Maryland high school football. It's phenomenal. And I know you're at Franklin. You're the defensive coordinator there. How's your headset working, first of all?
It's working great.
Did it, at any point, did it meet the ground at a high speed?
It did not.
I've seen you do that.
It did not.
I've seen you do it.
A lot less pressure as a D coordinator than as a head coach, so I think it's going to stay on the whole year.
Confound it. Like a hoagie dancing guy. So let's go over some results, some things that impressed you over the weekend. Who caught your eye?
Well, I think Calvert Hall and Donald Davis, with the big win over St. Mary's Riken, 34-14. Donald's going to have a really good team, off to a great start, 2-0. And I think Calvert Hall is going to be a real tough out in the MIAA.
Quick story about Calvert Hall. I was doing the Calvert Hall-Gilman football game in 2013, and Gilman was a great program. And they were winning games. They had beaten Calvert Hall year after year after year. Calvert Hall catches lightning in a bottle. They're having a great game. And they block a punt late, and they're going in. They score the touchdown, and they're going to kick the extra point to give them a 1-point lead. And I've never used profanity on the air. But, you're kind of, as a broadcaster, you're rooting for a close game. You don't care who wins. And now you're seeing the underdog's going to come away, and all they got to do is kick the extra point. The kid he snaps it, goes right into the holder's hands and right through him. And I said, oh, shoot. But we had to go back and mute it out of the tape because we were not live, which is good. But I did say, oh, shoot.
Well, I probably said a lot worse on the sideline if I was coaching Calvert Hall.
Who else do you like other than the Cardinals?
Well, I'll tell you, Franklin, I'm impressed with my team, Franklin, to be honest. Burgess does a really good job, has a great culture at Franklin. And this is the first time Franklin has traveled out of state to play a really high-level New York team.
Up in Long Island?
Up in Long Island, Melville, St. Anthony's Melville.
You
Very
didn't
good.
play them in lacrosse?
We didn't. They would have probably beat us in lacrosse, no doubt.
What was the score of the game?
33.
They would have hung 33, half a 66 on you.
I'm very sure. I'm quite
Relax.
aware of that. But I'm glad it was a football game. But the Franklin kids played well. They were resilient the whole game. They played great. Our team speed kind of ultimately beat St. Anthony's.
At any point, did you look out on the field and say, it's a bunch of pillow fighters out here? It's one
I
of
did
your,
not. I did
I
not.
say, confound it. He says pillow fighters. It's like a pillow fight out there. I've
That's
heard
true.
you.
I don't think I've used that one for a while.
Oh, you got to get it out of the closet and take it for a walk, Tommy.
I hear you,
All right,
brother.
so you got Franklin's looking good.
Yeah.
And you sang about Spalding. Is
I
something
did.
on their page?
Really good. Kyle's a great coach. He really is. He was a GA at Maryland for a while, learned a lot of football down there at Maryland, but they beat Bishop Moore in Florida. They're scoring 56, 55 a week, so I think they scored 110 points in their first two games. So Spalding will always be really good on
I
offense.
might be able to play for that team.
I think so.
Yeah, once you get up by 50, I think they can run the bookman in.
There's no
Yeah.
doubt. A couple off-tackle plays, and you'll be good to go.
I don't need to block anybody. Every year, I played 1 year of high school football, and every year I go to my reunion, and I have to apologize to our running back and say, I missed the guy. And you were out for 2 weeks with a sprain, badly high ankle sprain because he tied you in a knot, and he went right by me to go do it.
I hear you. I hear you. I think the other team, there was really a big interest in the Mervo-Dunbar game. 2,000 fans at the game, so in the city it was a big game. And Kellen Kimbrough really kind of did a great job for Mervo, and Mervo won 20-14. So I think Mervo's got a chance to be pretty good this year.
I love a good suspenseful game. Like I alluded to the Gilman-Calvert Hall game from years ago where I said, oh, shoot. But you talk about a couple blowouts in teams that are racking up a lot of points. Nail biters and what's upcoming.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, Milford Mill, Reggie White at Milford Mill always puts a good product out there, and Newtown is an up-and-coming team, and they played early in the year this year. Obviously, a lot of local interest. I heard it was a huge crowd there, and Milford Mill kind of won 14-12 in a nail-biter. But I think, both of those teams will be probably playoff bound, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe both of them are deep into the Maryland Public School playoffs this year.
And when you talk about playoffs, we'll get into some, like you alluded to Maryland with a nice win over Syracuse. We might dabble into some of the college stuff. I think we might leave the pro football to the pro football guys, which is fine. Who are some players to watch? I know Damascus has, obviously, can we call him a stud?
Well, he's probably a freak of nature, to be honest. Like, just watch him on YouTube. Pull him up, Brian Brissy. He's a Clemson commit. He plays at Damascus. And if you're in this area, not only can you go watch elite-level national football in St. Francis and St. John's, you can get on Route 70, ride up to Damascus, and actually watch the #1 high school player in the country that's maybe a 20-minute ride away. So I would encourage everyone to go out and watch Brian Brissy play a game on a Friday night at Damascus.
And what position is he?
He's a defensive tackle. He's 6'5", 290 pounds. He's bench pressing over 400 pounds. And if you watch the YouTube highlight on Brian Brissy, you would be amazed. I've never seen anything like it in my 30 years of coaching.
Like a man against boys.
He looks like Andre the Giant wrestling like a lot of short guys.
A lot of our listeners may not remember Andre the Giant, but you can tweet the show, and we will take some questions and calls late as the fall starts to go along and we start getting some traction here. My Twitter handle, just at Booker Corrigan, very easy to get to me. And Coach Damico is refrained from getting on to Twitter. How does that feel to not have to tweet?
I don't even know what a tweet is, to be honest with you, but I know it gets a lot of people in trouble, so I kind of think I'll stay off of it.
And we got some matchups for next week. Who do you like?
Yeah, well, personally, just because it's
Franklin.
Franklin McDonough. I've been there for 24 or 25 years.
When is the game? What time?
Friday night at 6 o'clock at McDonough, so it's going to be exciting. Coming back there and coaching a different team. But it'll be fun. I look forward to meeting my old players that I coached and coaching in the stadium where I spent a quarter of a century. So it's going to be fun.
How's that feel?
It's I don't know. I think it's going to be a little bit emotional, but
right.
I'm really focused on making sure the Franklin kids are as prepared as they can be and trying to get their kids to play.
Keep your headset from hitting the ground at a high speed.
Well, they if they have a chance to hit the turf at any game, it might be this week.
Now, you talk about how your affinity for the McDonough athletes. who stands out? I mean, Dwayne Stooks stands out to me. He was just the nicest kid. You got Dante Evans, who was a basketball player. He's in the Hall of Fame at Westchester, but he played football for you just because he wanted to be a part of it. Who are some of the names that you look back on?
Yeah, you mentioned Dante. What a great kid. Not only a multi-sport athlete, but a great human being. And Dante's up at the Haverford School in Philadelphia right now as their admissions director, doing a great job. He's got a beautiful family that lives outside of Philadelphia, and he's one of the all-time best kids at
his
McDonough
son
School.
Logan.
Yeah. He's got a whole basketball team. He's got 5 kids now. So, but Dante's an incredible person, a great kid, great athlete, and you just when you work that hard in high school, you sense success. And I think everybody that knows Dante knew that he was going to be successful, whatever he did.
I drove him up to Westchester for his recruiting visit for basketball, obviously. But the other thing I love about high school football is it's the greatest team sport there is. And I'm a lacrosse guy. I'm a hockey guy. I played a tiny, tiny bit of football, but one of the messages, one of the lessons I took away is the value of the team sport, because if you do your job so well, the guy next to you has a little bit easier unless he's going up against your defensive tackle from Damascus.
Yeah, no doubt.
You put the whole line on him.
It's definitely the ultimate team sport.
How do you convey that to your squad so that they respect it and appreciate what they have, because it's going to be gone so quickly? How do you get that to them? Is it in the film room? Is it on the practice field? Or is it only happening in games?
Well, I think the easiest way to do it is to win. If you win, I think they buy in much easier. If you're losing, then they kind of look at you side-eyed and think, does this guy really know what he's doing? So I think early success helps. But if you mimic, you have a solid process as a coach, and you preach the fundamentals, you preach respect and discipline, I think those things are going to, ultimately get the program where they need to be. And once you get kids believing that your system and what you're teaching them works, it's much easier to buy in.
This is Booker Corrigan and Dom Damico, the PressBox High School Football Show from the Live Casino Hotel studio. Love it. Love the Live Casino. Let's talk any more upcoming games?
Well, you know what? The biggest game probably on the national level, not on the local level, but St. Francis in Mater Dei. Mostly the national publications had them 1 or 2 or 2 or 1. So this could be a national championship game for St. Francis this weekend.
It'll be interesting to see how that evolves. And the whole St. Francis thing, one of the things you and I talked about in our preparations was I respect Biff Poggi and what he's done. And if he was into science, or if he was into robotics, I'm sure he would have found a school and said, you know what, we're going to have the best robotics club in the country because that's what I'm into, and kids benefit. He's changing lives. He really is giving those kids an opportunity to do something really special.
Yeah, and not just in football. He's a driving force behind probably keeping St. Francis School open as a school, period. So there's a lot more kids that go to St. Francis that don't play football, and I think he's a big part in actually keeping that school alive and keeping it still open.
I want to thank the U.S. Army for being one of our sponsors as well. I want to thank my man Luke for running the knobs. Coach, good luck this week in your game. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Although, as I like to say, I hope it doesn't come down to luck. But if it does, I hope your putt goes in.
I love it.
Yeah, you got it. That's Dom Damico. I'm Booker Corrigan. I'm reminding you, you only get one shot at today.